Scientists have developed technology that allows the recording and playback of human experiences right into the brain, and everyone wants their hands on it. Christopher Walken leads the cast in Brainstorm, an early 80s sci-fi movie that explores some pretty big ideas. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Pierre, and joining me as always is David.
I come in peace.
This is a science fiction movie podcast. We get together and talk about sci-fi movies. It's that simple, and today we're looking at a film from 1983 called Brainstorm, which stars Christopher Walken. So we'll get into everything. We'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you warning before we get into the spoilers. And of course, if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, please hit the like button. It helps out a bunch if you do. Give us 5 stars on the podcast apps, all that stuff. And of course, you can support us over at Patreon or YouTube membership and get some bonuses. But I'll tell you about that at the end of the episode. So yeah, this is a movie about some scientists, some researchers developing technology that is recording experiences. It's not, I mean, it may have been unique at the time when they did it, but I've definitely seen other science fiction kind of dip their toes into this kind of idea in more modern settings, more modern movies and TV shows. Black Mirror's definitely dabbled a little bit with this. Even something like Strange Days has a little bit of this idea of like playing back an experience that you actually sort of beam into your head and you can feel what the person felt as they were going through the experience. That's kind of what it's getting into. So Walken plays a scientist, and there's an estranged wife character, there's a sort of colleague character, and then you've even got Uncle Ben himself is in charge of the laboratory. He's the man, the CEO of the company, if you will, Cliff Robertson, who's already like not a young man here, so he was definitely pretty old by the time they were making Spider-Man 2002.
Oh yeah, no, when he walked into Christopher Walken's lab and said, "You're going to mess this all up. Remember, Christopher, with great power." And then he just trailed off.
It's like, guys, it's not time yet. Another 20 years, then it'll be time to say his line. So yeah, this is one that I did not really know about, never mind had seen before. Until I don't know how. I honestly sometimes I add stuff to the schedule and I don't remember why I discovered the movie, where I discovered it, or why I added it. Because we got to this movie and I thought it was something else that I'd added, and then I went, no, it's a movie with Christopher Walken. It's not what I thought it was. Why did I add it? I don't remember, but it was there and it was next. So here we are. We're on a journey of discovery. I assume you hadn't heard of this either.
No, not at all. Based off of what I'm seeing online, this seems to be one of those movies that maybe didn't hit it so big in theaters, but was absolutely one that was on like the movie channels. And a lot of people around this time were just like, oh yeah, I remember seeing this on cable TV. This was a default childhood memory of mine.
Yeah, I think, it's some interesting stuff, because when I looked into it, as I was putting it on, and I was like, okay, let me just have a quick bit of, background for what this movie is. There's actually a lot of real world stuff going on around this one that we'll get into a little bit. Natalie Wood, who's the co-lead of the film, the estranged wife who plays Karen, she died before this movie came out. In fact, just kind of before it was even finished filming. She'd done most of her scenes. There's a couple of maybe like pickups, I assume some over-the-shoulder stuff that they got her sister to do later on, but she died in kind of mysterious, well, I say mysterious, suspicious circumstances is maybe the better word to use, on a boat, and Christopher Walken was on the boat with her, although it seems like he's never been under any suspicion himself. It's more the husband that she had at the time who... the case was like reopened in like 2018 and he was named a person of interest, and I'm like, oh great, he's like 85 by this point. Good job, authorities. But she was a child actress who was in like Miracle on 34th Street, and she was big as a teenager. She took a break from acting for some time, and then this was kind of her comeback role, from what I could see. And yeah, by all accounts, she had a fight with her husband on the boat. The husband obviously maintains that, he didn't do anything, that she must have got drunk and fallen overboard or tried to leave on the dinghy or whatever it was. But there was bruises on the body, stuff like that. I don't want to get super into it. We're not here to investigate this woman's death, but this is just to kind of show that there's some clouds around this movie, and certainly there was some, they didn't finish it for a while. In fact, MGM wanted to pull out of the movie after the death, but then it was when other studios started offering money to buy the movie, they went, oh wait, people are interested in this? Oh, maybe we will help pay to finish this off. And they finally released it about 2 years after she died. But yeah, there's a whole, kerfuffle around it, to put it lightly.
I remember, I can't remember what I was looking it up for, but I remember finding out that, Christopher Walken was to some extent involved in another celebrity death. And I read about the stuff on the boat, all that stuff, whatever, but I didn't know it was Natalie Wood, and I definitely didn't know it was to do with this movie specifically. So I rediscovered that probably about like 3/4 of the way through the movie, which it kind of impacted the way I'm watching the movie, because now I'm like, with that knowledge, I'm watching how this final bit plays out involving their characters, and I'm like, oh God, when was the shot and relativeness of like that happening?
Yeah, some of the themes definitely hit a little bit differently when one of them actually died during the making of the movie. So it's, I don't know, obviously we might bring up a little bit as we talk about some context later on and how things are kind of eerie or whatever, but worth mentioning all this stuff up front, because it is something that impacts maybe how you think about the movie. And because every so often you get a movie like this where someone involved died during the making of it, or maybe soon after it was finished. The Dark Knight's another big one where obviously that death had very little, if anything, to do with the movie itself. And arguably even this, I mean, other than the fact that Walken was chilling with them on their boat, very little to do with the movie itself. But you have this weird, it's their final movie and they never got to see it finished, and like it had to be finished when they were already dead. And there's The Crow is maybe another one, obviously, with Brandon Lee, which was much more actually tied to the movie because it was on the movie set that he died. But just kind of I don't know, it does add a little bit of a layer to the film that's different, and it's not something the film earned or anything, but there is kind of like an extra little feeling you get as you're watching it because of that, if you know about it as you're watching. So
I think it's extra bad, and I don't even know if I should be saying this in poor taste or not, but it's extra bad because the moment I was reading about it, the moment I was like, oh, okay, this happened, was the moment that like their shared kid or whatever is swimming in a pool, and she's like trying to get the kid out of the pool, and I was like, oh no, this is not good. I don't like this. Oh,
that's just very badly coincidental. I think more than anything.
Absolutely.
So that out of the way, the other big name in here is Louise Fletcher, who plays kind of the colleague, the other scientist. She is mainly known for playing Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I spotted her immediately as soon as she was on screen. But so that's the other big name that's in here, the big character that's here. So yeah, I mean, we have a pretty solid cast then for our lead roles.
No, I enjoyed all of them immensely. I think they did a great job there, and even the I would say more B tier, the more tertiary characters, they were all still very good in their roles as well. For the few that I recognized, the one that stood out to me was Joe Dorsey, plays kind of like the best friend of Christopher Walken, who's also involved at the lab. I've seen him in a couple things, most notably War Games he was a big part of, and I enjoyed him in this as well. He did a great job.
Yeah, well, I guess that leads to the main question then, is what did you think of Brainstorm?
I liked it. I think it was weird because what it opens up with led me to believe that this was going to be some sort of like borderline Tron sort of thing going on, where it's just like a visual effects movie and we're just using this as a byproduct to get there. It's really not that. It ultimately involves just a bunch more of the idea of the tech itself rather than visually what it does. But it's a lot more of an idea piece than a plot one. And I think that's what really surprised me was you get to, I would say about 45 minutes in this hour, 45-minute movie, and it feels like the plot is really starting to pick up. It feels like, okay, here's the big thing that's happening. We've established what the tech can do. Here's the big thing that's happening. But even from that point on, while there is a low-level plot in the background, it's a lot more on the ideas of expanding the human experience and what all can we do with this technology that allows people to see things from another person's perspective and to feel things in that way. And overall, I think that it tackles the subject well. It does a great job of kind of taking that to its logical conclusion, getting to the end and saying, like, what can we as humans truly, like, what's the highest heights we can reach there? And it did a good job visually as well, because the other part of it is the director, scrolled away from it real quick. Douglas Trumbull didn't do a lot of directing, but did a lot of visual effects work in Hollywood prior to this on a lot of big projects. And you can tell, I think that when they do get into the visual effects stuff, when it starts getting a bit trippier like that, it feels so far past like your standard 1983 blockbuster. It feels like they really knew what they were doing. They did like the full ILM treatment. So overall, I got to say I did enjoy it. The only thing that I might be able to criticize it all for is there are periods of this that are very slow. And eventually we get out of those moments. But if you're not here for a slow burn, you're probably not going to like this one.
Yeah, I think I'm a little less positive than you. Like, I think I like the concepts of the movie. I think the characters are mostly solid and the performances are good. I think I like a lot of specific moments in here. I will say, though, you said there that, you know, it explores these ideas, right? Well, right? This idea of that we can sort of see things from someone else's perspective because we can sort of see it literally through their eyes by playing back their experience, their memory, what they were thinking during this bit. I don't think it goes far enough with that. I think there's more exploration to do. I think you could have went deeper with this stuff and made it more emotional and even more about the characters and their, you know, it kind of touches on this idea of like this married couple who have fallen apart, but then sort of seeing each other through each other's eyes kind of thing. And I won't get any further in that until we get to spoilers, but there's so much potential there. There's, you know, verging into Eternal Sunshine kind of like areas where I almost feel like, you know, Eternal Sunshine is this running, right? This is walking so Eternal Sunshine can go and run with some of the big ideas that it can do. Now, there's other big ideas in here as well, which is also nice that it touches on, and it does go certain distances with some of them as well. But I do think there could have been like, all right, let's do a few more drafts of this script and let's really focus on the bits that really are tantalizing from a science fiction, from a human exploration side of things. And I think there's an extra layer that's just kind of missing. I think the movie's good, but I think there's an extra layer where it could have went into, you know, I think there's a reason why this doesn't really get brought up that much outside of maybe the connections to someone's death and people who saw it a lot on cable. I think there's an extra layer where it could have been, oh, this is one of the great science fiction films and one of the things you think of immediately when you think of sci-fi in the 80s, and it doesn't quite reach that point. There's that extra layer of just that special quality where it's knocking on the door, but it just doesn't quite have enough depth to get to that point. So I don't want to sound too negative, because I still think it's good, and I still think there's a lot of good things in it, but I just don't think it quite reaches the heights of the potential that I think that it could have hit.
Yeah, no, I get that. And honestly, I do agree to a point, but I think that's viewing it through the lens of what we would want it to be in this science fiction aspect to it. And I agree that I would have much liked it more to get into this idea of connections, the interconnectedness of people and being able to see from that stuff. But what the movie, without spoiling too much, decides to get into is a lot more of the metaphysical aspect, a lot more of exploring that side of things. And from that perspective, I really like the way that they go through and do that exploration. It's a very interesting way of viewing that, and that's why I think I'm just a little bit more positive. But yeah, if they didn't want to go down the metaphysical route, I would have absolutely loved to see a lot more of this, exploring things from other people's perspective, repairing these relationships, and also the ability to break them down significantly worse. The idea of like people being two-faced or whatever and putting up this facade, and you get to see through that as well. It'd be a great examination of the human condition, but in what we ended up getting, it's kind of the last stepping stone until we get to the thing that the movie seems more interested in doing.
Yeah, and I do think one or two of the beats to get there feel a little bit weird to me. Like, it really wanted to go in a certain direction, so certain characters make decisions that have to be made so the ending can play out that the movie wants to have, as opposed to stuff that would make more sense to me. But I'll get into that in spoilers, obviously. I can't really talk about that as of yet. One thing I do want to talk about as well here is aspect ratios. Now, I am someone who is very open to directors using different ratios, and you can have multiple ratios in your movie. And I'm sure theatrically this was an interesting experience and probably worked quite well, where anytime we're seeing something that someone is seeing on a playback in someone's head from a memory or something like that, it's the full 2.40 to 1 widescreen, right? The same ratio that a lot of movies are. Whenever it's not doing that and it's just the regular scenes of people talking, of, you know, in the lab, whatever, I think it's about 1/661. It's hard to tell exactly, but it's a little bit wider than 4:3, but not quite 185. Anyway, the point is that the idea is that you're watching this theatrically, you're in 1/661, which is quite narrow, relatively speaking, in a movie theater, and then it gets wider, like your scope is literally getting bigger as you get into like the mind and we're seeing all these wondrous things. I totally get what they're doing there. The problem, however, is that in the home version, at least the one I watched, the way that they maintained this is that they didn't want to like rob it of the idea of it getting bigger. So whenever it's not in the full widescreen, which looks like any other widescreen movie on your 16:9 TV, it's completely window boxed on all sides. The correct approach here, I think, would have been to have the 1/6 to 1 stuff go full height, so that you're just got a little bit of black bars at the sides, which is what movies would normally do. But because this wanted to have the full effect of it going wider the entire time, anytime it did, which is only a small percentage of the movie, may I add, like most of the movie is in this full window box mode if you're watching like at home now, meaning that you're effectively just getting a box in the middle of the screen with the movies playing and you're getting black in all sides. Was it the same for you when you were watching it?
It didn't jump out to me as such. I'm clicking through. I watched, there's a free version on YouTube as it stands right now. Anytime that it cut to memory stuff, I got what looks like a fisheye lens effect.
There's a fisheye, yeah, but it's wider. It's a much wider image at that point.
All I see when on my standard player here is that it does go top to bottom, and then the curve of the fisheye is a little bit of black on the sides, but that's it. It's
that's
not.
all.
I don't have a full. No, I don't have top and bottom.
No, so yeah. So I think what I was watching in theory was more authentic, but I think for the home version, they should have been willing to go full height for the 1/6 to 1 stuff. Clearly, I don't think your version was doing this in quite the same way, so it wasn't as impactful to you. But it was a little bit frustrating having literally, I'd say like 60% of my screen be black, like in all sides. It was pretty. It felt like I was watching a small window for the majority of the movie, and I get the idea that in a movie theater you would just be going wider from that narrower image, but it's a little bit different here on a 16:9 screen. I think the effect of it changing ratios would still work if you were still going full height on which is ultimately the bulk of the movie, which is really frustrating because it's like mostly in this little box. So I do have some critiques with how it handled that. But that's less a critique about the movie itself and more about how the distributor's chosen to handle it for certain home releases. But what's mentioning?
I mean, it's obviously not an equivalent, but it feels like the same sort of complaint as like a pan and scan sort of thing, where it's like there's better ways to deal with this, and you just chose one, and it doesn't work here.
Yeah, I mean, this is better than pan and scan because it's still showing you the whole thing, but it just, there was a better choice to be made. The one that they've done is just a little bit oddly frustrating. It's this idea that it's always presenting 2.481 even when it's going to a narrower field, so you're just getting black in all sides at that point. So, which would be fine if you're watching on a screen that shape, it would make sense, but the 99.9999% of people are not because they're very rare.
Yeah, I mean, just a little bit of trivia here. Because this guy was so involved with like special effects and stuff like that, the visual side of things, apparently he wanted to come up with I guess you'd call it a predecessor to IMAX. He called it Show Scan, which is 60 frames per second, like special widescreen thing. And that would be what this is. That would be this idea of it being
the brain sequences, we'll call them, I guess. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, it would basically equivalent to, okay, if we want to get this technology for them to be able to do that, we have to ship these projectors out to every single theater and get them retrofitted. That ain't gonna fly. So it didn't end up going through. But this is the director basically went on to be one of the major developers for IMAX. So
Oh, that's not
Yeah.
surprising then, I guess. That makes sense. Interesting to see the lineage there. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, there has been movies that kind of push things forward, and I can't name them off the top of my head, where, like, oh, all the theaters need to upgrade their sound system to play this in stereo. All the theaters need to, like, get these types of projectors because, you know, this movie's, you know, like, even something as simple as, hey, we're shifting all these aspect ratios to widescreen because we're competing with TV now. Like, that's definitely been a thing, but it is a tall order for one movie, especially when you're not the biggest movie on the planet, to be like, hey, all the movie theaters need to like upgrade their tech to even play our movie. That's a very tall order, like to not have like a more normal version to play. So I get why it didn't happen, but interesting.
I feel like the last time I remember that happening was the 3D retrofit. It was when everything was going 3D for a while there.
But at least then, though, you can still play the movies in 2D. You can still have a 2D version of it playing the regular screen. So it's not like you were just cut out of it if you couldn't. So, but hey, yeah, it is interesting just seeing how that stuff develops. Especially playing with frame rates, which is, you know, because that's the thing that would have really messed them up is like, hey, our projectors play at one frame rate. There's no way of changing this. It's a bit different now, though, because everything is digital, so you can literally have something shift to a new frame rate and a container that works for the whole thing. But regardless, I mean, it's funny actually because the brain, you know, tapes, we'll call them in this movie, they are like big film canisters, but when they pull them out, it's like reels of film, but they're a lot wider because they've got like 7 tracks of things happening. And I thought it was interesting because it was like, okay, this feels old school because it's film, but it does feel advanced for the time period because this is like it's like they thought what would futuristic film look like as opposed to how would we change into new formats, so which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, the idea of like, oh, it's so futuristic, it's so crazy, but nobody thought maybe on a disc, maybe? No?
Yeah, I can't get it, but you get the visual of it all running as well, which is maybe part of the appeal, as you can actually see it going through like a machine kind of thing. You know, say what you want about modern SSD storage, it doesn't look fancy when you're using it; it just sits there.
Oh God, I mean, you're right, because that's the part of the third act. They have fun with the fact that everything's on tapes, like they get to go crazy with it. So good on them. Yeah,
that makes sense, but it looks super advanced because even like movies at their like most high tech on film, which is even IMAX, although I think IMAX may have the audio in a different strip, but like, you know, when you got like a movie up until they all switched to digital, you'd have the film and then you'd have like the 6 tracks of audio because that's like the 5.1 sound. I don't know if like Atmos obviously exists now, but I don't know if that existed in like old school film like formats. But this film you see in this for the brain stuff is like, no, you can see like there's like multiple tracks of different things going the entire way across. So they at least made it feel like it was a futuristic version of what existed at the time. So it made sense to anyone watching it, I would say. So
I think that's part of what makes this movie very well done, in my opinion. Of it feels like it takes forever to get into the plot, but it makes sure you understand how the technology works. From like, where are we at now? It makes you understand, even watching it all these years later, how much of a massive leap forward it feels relative to what they had at the time. And it really sells that point.
Yeah, and they even make you understand the process a little bit of like, you know, there's a sequence early on where someone is going out with like a sort of camera suit on and like, this person's going to go record some experiences with their suit on because we have to have experiences to play. We need demo footage basically. So this guy goes and rides some horses. He does some skydiving. He does, you know, goes down like a water chute or whatever. And it's just all this stuff. It's like, hey, this is going to play in our demo. It's the equivalent of like you've got a new TV you want to show off. Well, we need a bunch of nature footage that's, you know, in 4K HDR to make it all look pretty. So that's effectively what this is. Get him to do a bunch of stuff that's like adrenaline fueled and whatever else.
Yeah, so. I will say that's one part of the movie, and we might be moving slightly into spoilers, but the one part of the movie that I really appreciate is that when they start, the technology isn't finished yet. They made the breakthrough, but the whole thing is that it's only really the senses. Like all of your senses are doing whatever, but there's no emotional carryover. There's no like physiological carryover, anything like that. It's just, you can taste the things, you can smell the things, you can hear the things. So they're still working on it. And then over the course of the movie, you see them making just these tiny, smaller breakthroughs over top of it, as well as one great touch I love is that it starts with this massive headpiece, this like the thing from Back to the Future that Doc Brown's wearing when he answers the door, just this huge thing. And then over the course of it, you see them like start moving into marketing and stuff, and it gets slimmer and slimmer and smaller, and it's almost unrecognizable from its original form when it starts, but you get to see that slow evolution that tells you how much time has passed with this stuff.
Yeah, no, but they talk about the importance of, like, it can't be intimidating. It has to be consumer friendly. It has to be this, it has to be that. So just the logic behind, we have to make it smaller, we have to make it work better. What can we strip out of the headpiece and put it in just like the, you know, the box that will come with it, the actual thing that will drive the stuff. But how much can we take out of the head bit itself to slim it down to just a comfortable little thing that you put on? So I like the logic behind some of that stuff, but yeah, we'll talk a bit more about that in spoilers. As far as anything else goes, before we get into it, actually, one thing I will say is that, so obviously there's a score to this movie, right? And there's a pivotal scene, which I can't talk about at all in spoiler free, but there's a pivotal scene about halfway through the movie or so where the music really kicked in and I was noticing it. And there was a little flourish that happens, a little motif that plays in the music. Okay. And I immediately sat up and went, James Horner made this music. And I looked it up. Oh. And I was right. It was James Horner. Because there's a little flourish that he's put in a lot of his scores. You can hear it in Avatar as well, which is where I mainly know it from. But it's a na-na-na-na, na-na-na-na, right? And there's a scene in this movie where it plays a bunch of times, and I'm like, this has to be Horner. And I looked it up, and it was him, and I'm like, son of a bitch, I'm that good. Right, I got it. So I just wanted to mention the music. Music's solid. The music, I mean, James Horner was a good composer. He did reuse some bits and pieces from his own work a lot, but like the music is good. It fits the movie quite well, and it makes some of the scenes a bit more dramatic than they otherwise might feel because he's putting in the effort. So yeah, wanted to mention that.
Oh yeah. No, this was, I just pulled him up. This was very early in his career. The only thing he was doing at the same time here was Krull, which we just loved Krull.
Look, everyone's got to start somewhere. I don't look down on him for it. It'd only be a couple of more years before he was doing Aliens, so
true. He just got off Wrath of Khan, actually.
Hey, that's another big one. Like he's putting in the work. He's doing all these big sci-fi movies. I wonder if I could probably look and see how many movies have been reviewed on the Ace that James Horner did the soundtrack for, because I bet it's a pretty hefty amount.
No doubt. Yeah. I'm scrolling through here, and it's I've seen at least Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Did you do Rocketeer? I can't remember if you've done that.
No, not as of yet.
No. All right. Well, I won't go through all of them, but I'm sure there's a few.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's a bunch. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is an interesting one because it's obviously a lot lighter because it's more of a adventure style movie. Whereas this is meant to be a more cerebral kind of sci-fi. I wouldn't quite call it hard sci-fi, but it's definitely sort of venturing more closer to that than, we've got spaceships and they're firing laser beams at each other kind of thing.
Yeah, it I don't want to say that it's childish because it's not, but it is. I don't know. This movie strikes me as it's somewhere in the middle between like the Cronenberg films of the era, where it feels like it's hitting on such like huge ideas and like not a cosmic horror aspect, but just this something beyond humanity. But it is also so digestible and so like easy to pick up that it doesn't feel like it's that impenetrable either. It's this weird middle ground that is a hard to describe tone, I feel like.
I can see that. And maybe that's partly why it never kind of connected with people, is that it wasn't going far enough to be like, I guess that cerebral, like a Cronenberg like exploration of this same material would be, but it's, maybe it's a little bit too light for the subjects that it's tackling versus, whatever. But it's also not, for the normal people who do see it and expect more of a normal mainstream kind of movie, they're getting something that's not, like, it's a little drier, it's not quite as adventurous, it's doing something that's, not as showy, so it's kind of like not satisfying maybe two sides of like the potential audience that it's maybe in the middle of. Maybe that's why it's not been remembered quite as much as other movies from the era.
Maybe.
Just a thought. Anyway, let's do spoilers. Spoilers for Brainstorm. Right. For this point on, you have been warned. We're about to get into it. So yeah, I genuinely don't think this is going to be a like go through an order type ordeal. Because I think the first half of the movie, for the most part, there's some key things to talk about in terms of like overall what it's doing. But I don't think going through the whole like, oh, this is they meet the boss here, they meet these guys here to talk about their tech and so on and so on. Like the key ideas that are coming up is that we have our main character Michael, played by Christopher Walken, who's testing this tech with Lillian, who he works with, who is constantly chain smoking, played by Louise Fletcher. And we get introduced quite early on to his estranged wife, Karen, who also works at the same company, although seemingly, as we find out, they've never really worked together, though. Like, they always made a point to keep their work relationship separate because they were involved with each other, but then they're kind of forced to work on this project. And she's like more the, I don't know, the marketing person, I guess, who's going to, like, make it more, like, you know, she's the one who comes in and says, all right, I'm going to redesign this to look nice for people and like sort of be able to tell people what it is and so on. Whereas Christopher Walken's like, I don't care how it looks, I just want to do good sciencey things.
What do you mean exposed wires aren't consumer friendly?
So those are our characters, and then the other creeping thing that comes in, which we didn't mention too much when we were doing the spoiler-free stuff, is this idea that now that they're starting to have breakthroughs, there's third parties that are starting to get interested, mainly the military and the government, who are like, oh, what's this technology? Could we use this for something? But because they partially fund this company, Alex, played by Chris Robertson, who runs the company, like has to let them be in and come in, and like immediately a big character point for Lillian is that she's the one who recognizes that, oh, they're coming in and like taking our tech, they're coming in and making it about what they want, and it's going to be used for nefarious things. And maybe she's not even thinking about what the extent of those nefarious things could be. She just immediately recognizes it as some kind of takeover. So that's a big character point early on.
Yeah, that's the thing I really like about that section where they show, okay, we made this breakthrough. Honest to God, it seems like they're doing everything in their power not to tell Alex that they made a breakthrough, but somebody tells him anyway.
Yes.
And like the way that you expect the story to go is Alex is going to be the one who sells them out. He's going to be the guy who's like, oh, we're a company first, damn it. Company needs to make money. Like, when you really get down to it, though, he's doing everything in his power to like try to make this work. Like everything he does, like as he meets up with all the military and the feds, he's like, I understand you guys pay for things. We're super grateful. But if you want this to continue, you need to give us some space here. You need to back up just a little bit. And of course, that's where Lillian comes in, just like, oh, it's the feds. Screw all you. I ain't doing nothing.
Yeah, she's very combative the second she sniffs out any, as she puts it, feds. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in this first half, but they're showing the tech off. Like, obviously, like, they show it off for Alex and he gets to experience some of it, because we get a montage of the experiences, then we get Alex sort of like sitting there experiencing some of it, and then of course they do the boardroom thing where they get a bunch of executives in and they're all got the headsets on, and they're watching various things, skydiving, flying over cities, all that stuff. I love the little detail at the end though, where it starts going into like a club and like three women in bikinis who are all very attractive come up and start offering drinks or something, and it cuts to a shot of the real world and all of the men have got this smile on their face, but there's this one woman who's testing it who's just sort of like side-eyeing them all, like she's clearly not as impressed about being presented women, and it does immediately raise the concern of like, well, surely this would be used for porn, and that subject is addressed, like people do, that is brought up. I
have said it no less than 3 times on this channel, usually when talking about VHS and Betamax.
Yes.
Whatever the porn is on is what will succeed. They should take that as a win. That is absolutely, if you can get porn working on your thing, great. You're going to get the technology out there. But
it seems to be like something that's not been officially done. It's just that someone who works in that lab decide, because they basically wear this thing to record their thoughts or whatever. And someone's put it on because someone, you know, comes into, like, it's Hal, the friend character who works at the company, and someone says, hey, look at this tape, it's better than a dirty magazine, seriously, like, you know, you use the tech, have a look at this. And later on he watches it, it's this POV memory of looking up at this woman on top of him, and she's talked into like going through this while he's wearing this headset, and you just sort of cut to his face, like the real person's face, you know, and he's like got this look in his face. And later on in the film, like the main characters get a call and they're brought round to him, and he's basically in like a trance. Like the wife's worried that he won't ever wake up again because he's just sitting there like a zombie drooling, and it seems like we see him earlier on when he first looked at the tape. He like cut a bit of it out and spliced the tape together, and it seems like he basically took the 2 seconds of the orgasm, and he's basically just been beaming that into his experience brain on a loop, like a GIF. But because this stuff at this point we've established also it gives the emotions and the feelings of whatever the memory is, he's basically just in this state of constant orgasm euphoria until Christopher Walken comes in and like shuts it off, and he immediately is like, no, give me it back. So it almost becomes a parallel for like heroin abuse or something like that, where he's immediately like, no, give me my fix. I need my fix back.
Pete, you completely misread that.
Oh, have
this
I?
is about the dangers of short form content and infinite looping.
This is why oh god, what was that thing called? Quibi. This is why Quibi never took off.
Yeah. Someone just sat there on a loop, just like, I've been watching it for 48 hours now.
But I like that they addressed this. I also like that this character like never became like, I don't know, like after, because he's still like an ally after this. Like he still kind of helps the main character. This isn't something where he becomes like a villain because of this or something like that, you know?
Yeah. I also like the fact that at this point they've also, obviously they moved out of the sensory stuff. They started saying that we can get feelings and whatever else moving through. But what they explicitly show after this section is that after he had done this, it's not like he becomes like an addict in recovery. It's not like he's going through withdrawal or whatever. He literally says like, I've never felt better in my life. Like I've got a newfound perspective. I'm going to leave this company and go out and like chase my dream job or whatever. It's like, oh, okay. So I guess let's just have everyone constantly orgasming and that'll just improve their lives? Question mark.
I mean, I all I can think is we don't see a scene of this happening, but I'm wondering like, what did Walken tell his wife? Like, does the wife know he was like orgasming endlessly to effectively a porn tape?
I'd have to assume, because they explicitly show that Alex does know about it, but he says like, we're going to keep this quiet. We're going to keep this between us. I have to assume that the wife knows.
Okay.
Like, what else are you going to say?
Yeah, I don't know. It's because I'm like, I mean, surely she would feel like, well, I'm never going to be good enough for him again, because like I can't give him like a sustained 72-hour orgasm. So, like, what good is real sex anymore at this point?
I just imagine he passes by that woman on the street, like just casually, and is just like, oh my god, I'm back in it again.
You're thinking of a Lonely Island kind of like I just in my pants kind of moment.
Immediately.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Or maybe just like he just sees her and goes up and just shakes her hands. Miss, you don't know me, but I just want to thank you. I just want to thank you for the best 3 days of my life. And she's like, okay,
what? Huh?
I guess.
What's going on?
Bye,
I think we're over exaggerating. I'm pretty sure this was like 12 hours, but I like that it gets longer every time we talk about it.
Regardless, but it was overnight at the very least, right? That's the implication anyway in the movie. Because like you say, it's all like, sight, sounds, feelings. But they're kind of like realizing almost by accident that effectively they're tapping into more kind of like emotions and kind of like even because there's a point where it sets up the family stuff. It sets up the estranged nature of the relationship between like Christopher Walken and Natalie Wood's characters, where they're selling their house. Which actually, pause right there. This house has got such a unique design.
Yeah.
They've got this like weird indoor pool, but they've got like a sort of balcony that hovers over most of it. It feels like it's like almost like a villain's lair in the coolest way possible.
Yeah. Later on in the movie, they're showing memories, and it seems to be Christopher Walken is the one who like put this all together.
Yeah, he built it.
He's the one who built the house. So I have to assume this is just, if you give a man an infinite budget and say build your dream house, this is just, here it is. There's everything. Sure. We've got like a giant satellite dish outside. We've got an indoor pool. I have my 17 dens that I can go to at any point.
This is the masturbating room, and then this over here is the the gym. This over here is where I do my reading. This is where I watch my movies. This room is just for video games. They're very different rooms. I know it seems like they're both rooms with screens, but they're very different acoustics, different ambiances, It's important.
And I really want to point out that the movie room can also double as the masturbating room again. Like the door opens up. Yeah.
Of course. And then here's the sex dungeon for when company wants to get really kinky.
Yes, it is. We're just coming out of the 70s. So this building was built during that whole period there. We had to be ready.
Yes. Anyway, so it sets up all this stuff, and that they're not in a great place. They're being very amicable. There's a little bit of tension whenever they're interacting around work and stuff like that. But the big scene where things take a real turn for everything is when she comes in with like a new prototype of an even more slimmed down headpiece for this whole thing, and he takes off the headset that he's already wearing because he's been doing some tinkering, and he's like, oh yeah, it looks great, sit down, put this on. And he just ignores what she's saying, and he puts on the headpiece and just says, clear your mind, just clear your mind and don't think about anything. But of course she's going to think about something. You can't completely, she's not a Buddhist like monk character, she can't just completely clear her mind. So they record her brain basically for, I don't know, 20-30 seconds, not even that long, and he's like, okay, that'll do. Now I'll put that on now, and he puts it into playback mode. And he sees like the last few seconds of her coming in the room, like from her POV. But then when she sits down and it's like, just clear your brain, she started thinking about a fight they had when they were starting to break up. And he sees this fight from her perspective of her accusing him of like not paying attention and ignoring her, which is beautiful actually, because that's literally what he did to her when she walked in this scene. He ignored what she was there to tell him, and
that's the reason she was thinking about it. Because it's like, wait, I've felt this feeling before. This is when it happened.
Yeah, and we see all the examples of that as he's like, I think it's when he goes home later and he's reliving more of like this moment or more of her like brain recording, and he's seeing more memories of like when he did this. When she's saying, hey, I want to put a flower bed out here. He's like, oh, you can put flowers around the giant satellite. Don't worry about it. Like he just dismisses her concerns.
I don't see what you're so upset about. It's a giant satellite. Looks great.
We get so many channels from like Taiwan. Don't you understand, honey?
I love though when he's finished with the playback, he stands up and he's just he's repeating her lines because obviously he's seen it from her perspective. So he has this righteous indignation that
he feels angry. And, he feels angry because she was angry.
Right, and he's chewing her out for it because that's the only way to direct it. And it's only once he leaves that the Lillian and her talk and just be like, what were you thinking about? Like, what was playing back there? He's like, oh, I was thinking about a fight we had. It's like, oh, cool, feelings work now. Awesome technological breakthrough. Yeah,
it's the big turning point, and then he like keeps playing this tape, and it makes him like experience more memories from her point of view of their marriage and how things broke down, but also happy moments where he sort of felt how she felt in these happy memories.
I also think part of it doesn't do a good job delineating, but I think part of it is also his memories that he is then recording down at the same point.
We see that in the next bit because he goes over to her place, like middle of the night. He comes in with the tech, the headset, and there's like a big sort of suitcase with a computer in it. And he's like, hey, I recorded you this. It's a gift. Play it. And then she plays it back, and she plays back some of the fights, sure, but a lot of the happy memories of when they were getting married. You know, when he was like whispering to a statue, I'm going to marry that girl, and just all these things from his perspective. And eventually, you know, when she finishes and he takes the headset off, and they just sort of look at each other and go, oh, we messed up, didn't we? And he's like, yeah, but I still feel all these things, and like, so do I. And, you know, they end up, kissing, and they end up spending the night together, and it kind of completely fixes the marriage. And I liked it getting into this stuff. It was like, hey, because they could see all these happy memories from each other's point of view, but also all the fights from each other's point of view, even without saying anything, it's like, well, he's going to understand how he pissed her off before in a way that he never could without experiencing it from her side.
Yeah, after they say, like, we really messed up and all that, there's this beat. There's just this silence for a second. And then they immediately just, like, collapse together. But they're not saying, like, oh, thank you for showing me that, whatever. They're specifically both saying, I never knew. They're both saying, like, I now see things from your side of things. There has been this, basically a mind meld here, where now they're able to understand how the other person thinks. They're able to understand how they feel about them in a deep personal level. And it only strengthens the relationship for that.
Yeah, and that does go back to something that Alex, the CEO character, kept saying, where he kept calling this a breakthrough in communication. Like, this is something that's going to advance communication in a way that we never could think possible. And he even brings up applications that are all sounding good. He says, like, this could be used for entertainment, obviously, and experiences that people, are either can or maybe want to try out experiences before they do it for real. But it can be used for education. We can have like students like experience something, to an extent, so they understand, what a certain war was like, or what an experience of another culture was like, or whatever. right?
I know you're right, because that is what he was saying to do it for, but I didn't think of it from the viewpoint of like, yeah, let's have the students just be in the middle of the trenches of World War II. Let's just let them have it.
Don't get me wrong. I'm sure in that context it would be heavily like, calibrated. The people would be picking the memories very specifically so it wouldn't get to a point where it's like, oh, this is going to into like R-rated, like traumatizing territory. But enough to like understand like this is why we shouldn't have war. Hey, y'all scared? Good. You should be scared of this, right?
Granddad, can I see your time during the war? Hey, what's this place called Amsterdam? Granddad, what are you doing?
But obviously, immediately you're like, okay, but all these other applications that the military might want their hands on because I was thinking like training soldiers or torturing people. Although by the time later on, it's like, oh, they want to just straight up read minds. They want to like brainwash people. They want to do all sorts of nefarious things with this, which is obviously what the back half of the movie becomes them about the main characters stopping from happening.
Yeah, that was basically the very first thing that happens after that. The feds and Lillian and all that is one guy gets back in the car and talks to another fed, and it's just like they tapped into the human mind, Joe. And the implication I feel like is yes, training, but I think a lot more of it is we can just literally take anything we want out of an enemy's mind and use it. We capture a spy, great. We now know their entire network.
Well, I think the brainwashing part's even more insidious because the brainwashing's like, wait, at what point, if they keep developing this, can they start just using it for propaganda to brainwash? Like, can they start just beaming it through everyone's TV at people and, go full...
get Batman Forever.
Yeah, full Jim Carrey
Forever.
Riddler, yeah. But, that's the sort of thing where you start to worry, like, how far will this go? And it's like, oh, should this tech even exist? Like, part of me thinks they should just destroy it because there's too many nefarious ways to use it as opposed to what they intended it for.
And that's kind of what Lillian's whole thing is during her like getting back at them and trying to do that is she says, you guys are going to take this away. Even if you're saying I can continue working on it, doing whatever. Once we get to a certain point, you're going to take this tech away and it's never going to be able to be fully developed into what it could be, into this thing that could like help everybody. It's only going to be used for these negative purposes. And that's why she's so vehemently against them joining in any capacity.
Yeah, and she has fights with Alex over it to the point where she actually gets kind of physically like ill at one point. And she's like her blood pressure's getting too high and she goes to the bathroom and kind of like hunches over, and that's kind of your big sign of what might come later, which is she does die in this movie. She has like effectively a heart attack, it seems like, during a scene, but she realizes she's dying. She realizes that and she gets scared, but she has the wherewithal to go over to the machine and put the headset on. She records her experience of dying so that someone can play that back later. This idea being that this, like, she can sort of give something in her final moments of like, oh, someone can experience what dying is like without actually having to die, and what could that unlock potentially? And this is actually obviously a great direction to go in, and it's like, oh, she recorded this for Christopher Walken's character, and that's a big deal, and like we're going to see what he experiences through that. My big thing though is that once he does play some of it back for the first time, and immediately he feels like all this pain, so he sort of stops. He's like, okay, let's like sort of filter this so the physical experiences don't come with it, because that's obviously too much to take. And the military guys who are spying on them like sort of hijack into it, but they don't filter it, so they end up getting their guy killed, who like sort of sits and experiences it with Christopher Walken, because Christopher Walken isn't getting the physical parts, he's just getting the sort of the brain, the spiritual part of it. But he doesn't get to finish because it kind of it still makes him react to such an extent that they kind of like force him to turn it off. And a lot of the back half of the movie is about them getting to like, the rest of that tape. He wants to experience the rest of that tape because Lillian left it for him and he wants to do it. My problem with this is that Alex and the military goons, the feds, all basically say, no one's ever going to play the rest of that tape. We're locking it up and you can never access it. And I'm like, I don't believe for a second that the military and the feds wouldn't want to have this tape played back.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, especially if you end up getting the idea of, okay, can we put this in like anybody's room? Is there things that we could just beam to them without their permission or whatever? They literally have a tape that can kill you. They have the tape from The Ring, except you don't have to wait 7 days. Like, it's here, there it is. This can just, and it's also a heart attack. on top of that. Like, there's no physical poison or anything like that. There's no mental sign of distress. It's just the person has the same heart attack that she had and then dies. And like, that's a weapon. That is absolutely a weapon. So from their point of view, not knowing about the filtering stuff.
Oh, sure.
I get why they're like, we're putting this on ice.
But I was even thinking it as a weapon. I was thinking about, you can convince me that the military, or at least the people high up who are rich and want to keep power, would want to know what death is, if only to try and avoid it or something. Like, I don't know. It felt like there's no way they would just lock that up and say, we don't want to look at that, and no one should ever be able to look at it. I'm like, I don't believe that for a second. But that's what they say.
The only way I could see it happen is through the conspiracy theory angle, because without getting too deep into it, it does get very metaphysical, and there is kind of an implication of a heaven to some visual extent.
That comes later. That's much later.
Right. But that's the sort of thing where it's like, oh man, the government's trying to shut it. They're trying to shut down the existence of God and heaven and stuff like that. That's the only reason I could think of it from that angle.
Yeah, but the problem is though, is that like that's the side that usually wants to promote all that bullshit.
Oh yeah.
So that doesn't even make sense to me, because they would want to say there was a heaven.
It doesn't have to make sense. That's what I'm not saying it has to make sense, but they're going to say that's the reason why.
That's my big hiccup in the plot, really, is that it just doesn't make sense to me that they wouldn't want to further explore that, and they kind of shut Walken out for wanting to explore it. And then it becomes about him and the wife hacking in and like doing it remotely and all the rest of it, and they know they're being watched, so a lot of the plot in the back half is them pretending to fight again, but they're really actually in cahoots. And I think the audience knows that quite well. I mean, because obviously the big thing that happens when he first tries to hack into it, and he finds out that it's called Project Brainstorm, which is what the military project using this tech is called, and he taps into it to see what they're doing, and he plays a little bit of the tape for himself, and it's it's this like psychological torture. This what the person's having a psychotic break, and they've recorded that. He puts it down quite quickly because he says, "Oh, this is dangerous," and he goes to tell his wife. Their son stumbles into the room and puts on the headset to see what's on it, and the son ends up being put in the hospital because he's had a psychotic break, and the doctor's like, your son's had a psychotic break, and like, yeah, but he'll be fine though, right? It's like, I mean, yeah, after a few days of like intense like monitoring and like meds and stuff, yeah, probably, but I love the idea of them trying to explain to a regular doctor how their son of 14 years old like had a psychotic break. Like, how did that happen? Oh, jeez.
I actually love the way that they present this in the movie, because over and over throughout the movie, he's brought into the lab, or like he's next to the equipment, and he's always just fiddling about with things, and it's always at a point where it should definitely not be something he's looking at. Like, I think the first time is the last previous scene we saw was the guy cutting up the porn tape. So you're sitting there like, oh God, is he going to put this on and then immediately just be blasted with like every single sensory thing of an orgasm? That's going to be weird. And then the next bit to it is honestly a weird scene for me, is after his parents had made up, he just walks into their bedroom as they're still like theoretically in the afterglow, they're still naked under the sheets. And rather than just saying like, oh, hey, mom and dad, you get back together, whatever, he comes down and sits on the bed with them, which is just weird. But at that point, he also goes over and starts fiddling with the machine again. It's like, no, those are personal memories of your parents, kid. You don't want to look at those. But then, of course, the third time's the charm, where finally he fiddles with it when it's psychological torture, and it's all the way. And it's not even this is one thing I don't think they explain very well in the movie. It's not even a specific experience. It is the ability to trigger subconscious fears and bring them to life. So it is like a fear toxin sort of thing. It is a personalized. This is what his subconscious fears.
Yeah, because he starts seeing like his like father letting them die, or like forcing them to drown or whatever, and it's like, oh, this obviously didn't happen. This is not a memory he's seeing. This is like,
right.
It's triggering something in him where he's like seeing the worst outcome or whatever. So it's I mean, that's obviously leads to like them all saying, hey, you and the wife should take a break, let us take care of the boy and take care of the research, you're banned from the lab. And Christopher Walken's yelling, and then the wife says, no, like, honey, and you can tell that she's basically sort of like giving him the eye that says, hey, pretend that you're doing what they say so we can go do something else. And this is not me critiquing Christopher Walken's acting, but I'm critiquing the character Michael's acting, because the way he shifts from being, oh, hell with you, you can't shut me out, this is my project, to like, yeah, you're right, I should take a break, I should go and get a vacation, yeah, lol, I'm off of my way.
The entire plan that they have is that they're just faking being on the phone and like having a conversation with each other, just to like give them time to work through it. These government agents listening to this must have never heard people speak before, because they're like, hey, honey, I'm so upset that you left in a huff. I want to talk about it with you over the phone for quite some time. And the wife's like, yes, dear, that sounds great. And it's like, yeah, this is how an emotional makeup conversation should go.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first part where they're fighting in person in front of the people that are watching them is quite convincing. Like, you know, the way... Yeah. Because he gets mad because they're staring at him, so they're kind of using some truth to say, oh, this fight comes from the fact that he's mad that they're being spied on, and then she storms away and leaves, but obviously this is all part of their plan, so she's in an unknown location, because they shut his phone line off, because he's using the phone lines to like hack into the lab, but then once he's cut off, the wife just does it from her end, because she's with the friend Hal and his wife, and she just hacks in from there, and they're like, shit, we don't know where she is, because they think she's at her mother's place or whatever. We kept following him because he's the one that we're concerned about, but she's in cahoots with him, so she does all this with him. And the entire like final segment of the movie is they make the lab go haywire, they lock all the doors, there's like an automated factory area with all these like robot arms that they get to just act crazy, so they're like, you know, pouring stuff out, and there's like foam bubbling up. Actually, I laugh because when we first see this area earlier on in the movie and he walks in, there's a sign saying it's been 400 and something days since we had an accident, and as soon as I saw that, I went, oh, that's something's happening in here later, because there's no way you show that and don't have an accident happening. So
absolutely,
nice setup, movie, nice setup.
Just to rewind for a moment, because just a moment that I found hilarious was during that sequence where they're separating, when they make the big hullabaloo in the restaurant area. I don't know if like they did multiple takes, or like they were told to ad-lib a little bit, or if this was maybe what was written, but I love that the extent of them arguing with each other in this sequence is them just shouting at increasing volumes, "Go to hell," back to each other over and over again. Like he kind of pushes her a little bit, and she's like, don't push me, you go to hell. And he's like, you go to hell too. No, you go to hell. No, you go to hell. And then the scene just ends, and I'm like, fair. It's if you're going to put on a fake argument, telling the other people to go to hell 6 or 7 times is probably all you need.
Well, I think when people start arguing, they're not that eloquent, you know, because they get just too angry to think about what they're saying, so they're just yelling simple things. It felt quite authentic, I thought, that fight. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. That's why I'm saying it felt like improv sort of stuff. It felt like this was not something that was like a scripted feeling, like it was thought out, or it felt very real of like, nah, just get angry with each other. Shout some slurs.
So, yeah, I mean, all of this is about him accessing the tape, the one that Lillian left for him. And he ends up playing it back. He goes to like the phone booth. He's like using the phone, the public phone at it's like a monument they're at. Like they had like a happy date on once.
Oh yeah. So this is this entire movie takes place in North Carolina, and North Carolina is where the Wright brothers had their first flight. So this is the museum for the Wright brothers. Well,
that was also a scientific breakthrough of sorts. So yeah, that makes sense thematically. So he's like experiencing this, and the wife eventually, once everything's like done at the lab, and she's like turned off the power at the lab, so they can't do anything there, and they're all frustrated. She goes and meets him for the end of the movie, which is basically him seeing more of these memories, and we see memories where Lillian was fighting with Alex, and again, Alex doesn't come off looking like a villain. He just comes off looking like a guy who has a job to do, but he's trying to do the best he can in the circumstance. And then it sort of transitions into more philosophical kind of like, oh, we're actually going to see her like have an afterlife experience because she died, and she sees the stars and she sort of floats toward. I mean, again, we don't see her; we just see his POV. But eventually, we see like a light, and we see lots of what can only be described as angels, like going towards this light. And Christopher Walken's getting more and more kind of in a trance, and he eventually collapses into his wife's arms. And one of the big things that happened in the middle of the movie when they got back together, and they're like, hey, we're going to stay in this together. She said, hey, but you have to promise me that you're not going to leave me again, that we are in this now. We are we're we're more solid as a couple as we've ever been. We're unified as one. We are husband and wife. We're not abandoning each other. And he promises that they won't. So here, when he's seemingly dying, that this even though this experience is kind of euphoric in a lot of ways, it is kind of killing him. He collapses and she starts yelling his name over and over again. You promised me, come back to me. So it's almost like he's traveling towards the light in that classic, dying kind of way.
Yeah.
And the wife's voice brings him back. But, when he does come back, he is happy and he looks up to the stars and whatnot. And the movie ends with them kissing. And the final shot is of their like memory bubble, like floating up into space towards the light.
That's part of like the special effects production stuff is all of when we see the first death of Lillian, when we're getting it from the machine's perspective, we get a out of body experience. We get it like lifting up and out, and then we slowly zoom out and we see that it's in a bubble. And then it zooms out to show all of these memories are in this like giant ring of bubbles that surround this like black void. And we go into a different one.
Actually,
we go into a different one. We get that.
Do you know what that made me think of a little bit? After Yang.
Yes.
A little bit after Yang.
No, I could definitely see that. Yeah, that's more digital. This one feels more ethereal. But yes,
but there's definitely
the sort of feel.
I was definitely thinking about this idea of exploring someone's like life and memories using technology after the fact. I was getting some parallels with that.
Oh, absolutely. If anything, After Yang is kind of what I wanted this back half of the movie to be, because as much as we did kind of just gloss over a lot of it, the back half of the movie after Lillian's death is a lot more conspiracy / heist minded.
It's the feds following them. It's their like plan to like get the tape out and like him to experience it. It almost kind of felt like I wanted more specific stakes in the back half. Like I get that he wants to finish this tape, but I almost didn't really get the sense that is there that much more to see on it? And obviously there was at the end, but I didn't feel that in the hunt to get it again. I was like, is there really some sort of like wild thing at the end of that tape that he's going to experience?
Yeah, no, I think that could have been demonstrated a lot better of how much more of the tape does he have. I don't know how you would visually do that, but giving the idea that he was cut off, because the first time he gets through, he's already seen like the bubble ring. He's already seeing this out of body experience. It's not like he got cut off really early on. So you don't get this vibe that there is that much more. Obviously there is. Obviously we get to the full moment of like exiting the galaxy and then zooming in on this light and seeing angels and whatnot. But as you're continuing on through the movie, you don't get the vibe that he really missed all that much. It feels like the equivalent of missing like the last 2 minutes of a movie. It's like, all right, but like you already know how it ends. Like, do you really need to see anything else at that point?
Yeah. And I get the curiosity. I think some stronger stakes in that back third, which might have also been about making sure they can't use it for bad reasons. So we want to destroy like all their stuff at the lab. Like that could have been made again more clear. It felt a bit wishy-washy. I'm like, is that the goal as well? It kind of feels like they're doing that, but they never really set up that this is our goal. We have to stop them from using this for bad stuff. Like they could have made that a bit more solid and defined, I think. Yeah,
I think that's kind of what they were trying to do with the son. The fact that he had the psychotic break, because that when they talk about Project Brainstorm and the fact that they have all these negative memories and all these things that they can inject into people's brains, it seems like that's going to be a big thing of, okay, we need to stop them because of this stuff. But once the son gets the psychotic break, it's essentially dropped. Like no one brings up Project Brainstorm again. It's just the backing of, well, now we know these are the bad guys, so we can do anything we want and be justified in doing it.
Yeah. I think there could be some clearer things there in that back half that would have elevated the movie, and potentially a bit more exploration of the actual relationships and like seeing things from each other's perspectives, which I guess is slightly a different movie as well. So you could have went on either path, but I think either way it should have been more developed in which way they went, which is why I feel like it's just a little bit more lukewarm than like outright praise for me in terms of like how I feel overall.
No, I agree. When I feel good about this movie, it's thinking about the highs. I'm thinking about the moments that it really swung for the fences and landed. I'm kind of just glossing over the lab being destroyed scenes and stuff like that, because it really doesn't have anything to do here. It feels like padding. It doesn't have that much going on with it. They have a whole bit where there's a security guard who pulls a gun on a robot arm, and then the robot arm uses a fire hose to blast him away. And I'm like, this is a different movie now.
Yeah, because they kind of set up that Walken was good at controlling the robot arm with this mind tech, because they showed a flashback of him doing it with Lillian where they were picking up cans of Coke. So here's your product placement, Coke. have a mountain of cans.
What?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, shill. But yeah, it felt like it was something out of a goofier movie, which I wouldn't even necessarily dislike that goofier movie. I mean, enjoy that goofier movie, but that's not what the rest of this movie's been, so it felt a little bit out of place.
Yeah, honest to God, the scene with Lillian's heart attack felt so visceral and so real and so just like of a grounding moment of the movie.
Yeah.
Anything that we do lighthearted after that, like, it needs to really earn it, or it needs to just be cut, because it doesn't feel like it's its place here.
I think you could do light after that, but it has to be something that fits emotionally with like what the characters are going through. Whereas this little moment with the arm and the gun, it just kind of felt like this doesn't add to like the what they're feeling about the loss of someone or experiencing potentially like a bit of the afterlife via this recording. It doesn't, nothing, like you can have him like look into her tape and maybe get like a memory that's lighthearted, and it would work because it's like, oh, this is a light memory of like a moment of where they bonded or something like that, you know? And that's fine. But the arm and the gun bit just felt like kind of goofy. And there's a lot of stuff with security guards breaking down the glass and the doors to try and get into areas and stuff. And ultimately that stuff was just kind of like shrugged to me. I was like, it's whatever. Yeah. I'm not really feeling much for it.
Honestly, you were talking about the stakes. I feel like I didn't understand the stakes at the end of the movie. The idea that they were tracking him and were going to like go up and arrest him, so he had to go to another location, that's fine. But the idea of they're destroying the whole lab at the same time as well, that I didn't feel like I got any reasonable explanation as to why that was necessary outside of just distractions.
Yeah. So some of that stuff could have been better defined at the end. And it maybe, I mean, like we said, they shot most of Natalie Wood's scenes before her death, but I do wonder if maybe a couple of scenes that were planned had to like be cut because she wasn't around anymore. And maybe that would have like further explained or added some stakes to this last third of the film, possibly.
Yeah, possibly. I will say, I as soon as I learned about how they used her sister for some pickup shots, I was on the lookout. I never noticed it. I never noticed any shot particularly.
I feel like it would have always been like over the shoulder stuff where it's just like a case of, hey, you're a similar build, similar hair, or they maybe just gave her a wig. But either way, like, you know, you'll stand in for like stuff at maybe a wide distance or whatever, or over the shoulder, which is the sort of thing that I think they did with The Crow and stuff like that. You know, there wasn't, like, not that they could have done this at the time, but there wasn't a lot of like this, we're going to deep fake, you know, the dead person's face onto another body to get this like final couple of shots, you know, Carrie Fisher style, you know. David, what are you rating Brainstorm out of 10?
I think that this one is great concept film. It does a great job of going through the concepts that it wants to. I do think that the plot in the second half is just kind of a bit too weak to thread those concepts together. I kind of either wanted a stronger plot or just give up on the plot and just make it an idea film. Make it we're going nuts with the human condition. For what we ended up getting, though, it is still very good. I appreciate the special effects, appreciate the acting. So I'm going to give it a very healthy 7.5.
Yeah, I'm wrestling between a 6.5 and a 7. That's kind of where I'm landing, which is to say, you know, it's over the line. It's definitely into the decent to good territory. There's great ideas in here. There's good performances. There's good technical qualities. But I do feel it lacking in like really being satisfying for what it's exploring, and, you know, talking about the stakes not quite being there in that back act and so on. I think it's an interesting enough film that I'm probably going to give it a 7 and say it's good and it's worth the look. But it does have problems. It doesn't quite live up to what it could be. But it's definitely more interesting, you know, some just like bit of slop that we, you know, sometimes have to watch. So definitely an interesting one, and one worth checking out if you're interested in, you know, the ideas that it's touching on. So yeah, there you go. That's Brainstorm, everyone. So hey, But what's coming up next time on the Atomic Cinema Experiment, you wonder? Well, we actually get into a little bit of a gauntlet here, all going to plan. Our next episode will be Begonia, which is the new Luca... how to say his name? I can't. I always forget how to say it. It's fine. But anyway, it's
the new Emma Stone movie.
The new Emma Stone movie, yes. But it's a remake of Save the Green Planet, and that's out in theaters. We should have that for you next week. And we have actually 3 weeks in a row of new theater releases on Ace, so kind of a wild few weeks ahead of us. But that is what's coming up next time on the show. Of course, David's got his homework movie in just a minute's time, so we'll get to that to wrap things up. But I'll just say, if you want to support the show and help us out, you can do that over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV or via YouTube membership and get access to the ratings rundown segment where we do a few extra ratings for, visuals, sound, acting, that kind of thing. Plus, of course, we do a bonus show once a month called Extra Reels, where we review some of the worst movies of all time. And sometimes they can be silly sci-fi. That's not really a requirement on that show, though. It's just some of the most laughably bad, well, hopefully laughably bad. Sometimes they're just torture. It just kind of depends.
Yeah.
But that's Extra Reels if you want access to it. We've recently done things like Love on a Leash, Psycho Shark, other classics such as Miami Connection and Deadly Prey. Mac and Me was, I think that's a sci-fi one. We did Mac and Me on Extra Reels. So if you want to get our thoughts on Mac and Me, you can get that over on Extra Reels as a patron or a YouTube member. Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone who already supports us, of course. But yes, David will wrap up the show with a homework movie. Every week, David goes back and checks out one of the films we did on the Ace before he joined the show. So, David, what was this week's homework movie?
Well, about a month ago, I watched a homework movie because I was preparing for something that I was eventually going to have to watch. And there's an interstitial. There's another one I had to watch to prepare for that next one. So I watched 2005's War of the Worlds.
Speaking of Extra Reels, coming soon is the new version of War of the Worlds that has got like a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes or something around there.
Yep. Yeah, no, I had already seen this one. This is the Tom Cruise one, Dakota Fanning, and that one guy who, God bless him, he was trying to have a career, and then Dragon Ball Evolution happened. I've seen this one before, but I don't think it was ever a movie that I actually sat down to watch. This was always something that it was like, between 2005 2012 or something, before streaming really took off. This was one that we could just pop this on, have it on, whatever. It was essentially felt like second screen content for a while there. And sitting down to actually give it attention, watching it the whole way through and all that, it's good. I feel like it is going to be something that only ages more and more poorly. And the reason I say that is that watching it now, a good 20 years after it came out, it feels so heavily linked with 9/11. It feels so heavily linked with the terrorist attacks and all that. And there is a lot to that. It does a great job of getting that sort of feel of terror of this thing just randomly happening and you don't know how to react and you just need to get through it as best you can. But that's really the part of it that is the strongest. And as we move farther and farther away from that memory and stuff like that, I feel like it's only going to get weaker because I couldn't give less of a crap about the family stuff. I tried really hard, but it just didn't work for me. I didn't care about the son in any aspect. And Dakota Fanning at an eventual point, I was like, all right, well, she's just going to run off in the middle of the night. Maybe she just is asking to die at this point. There's nothing that you can do at that point. So overall, it's got some good set pieces. I think visually, it's got a good style to it. The tripods and the aliens themselves are very well designed, so kudos on all that. But there was a point when we get a surprise cameo / role from Tim Robbins, where I don't think from that point on in the movie I really cared all that much. Everything up to that, I could at least fake it, but from there I was like, you've come to a complete halt, and I just don't feel like anything's happening now. So collectively, I did still have an okay enough time, but I think that I'm going to give this just a 7, and a lot of that's coming out of a 6 with just production design and the scale of it. That's the only thing that's getting it up from that 6 range.
Yeah, I'm lukewarm on it, and I'm definitely more lukewarm on it now than I was when it came out. I think it. I also agree. I don't really care about the characters that much in that movie, and it's a little bit just kind of misery porn in a lot of ways. So yeah, I'm very lukewarm as well. It is kind of funny though that Tim Robbins pops up because Morgan Freeman narrates the opening and the outro, and I'm like, I almost expect him to go, and then Andy Dufresne went nuts with a shotgun.
What happened to Andy Dufresne after the boat? Well, I'll tell you.
Anyway, there you go. That's War of the Worlds. We will see you next time again for Begonia, so look forward to that. Thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer ad salsa.